UFC Vegas 48. I watched this whole card. Ton of good fights. As I said before, a lot of the cards that we hear about and the media or whoever you may see says is a bad card, they tend to be really good cards. Um, even if you're not, I think this fight only had two guys on it that were ranked. The rest of the guys were, younger or older vets who aren't ranked anymore. But it was still a super fun card. A lot of really good fights, a lot of finishes. Um, you know, we'll kind of go through my favorite fights on the card. Kind of starting in the prelims. David Onama. This is a guy who he's barely making his second UFC fight. He fought his first fight against Mason Jones, but this was like a short notice call up at 155. He's more of a natural 145er. That's the division he's most used to. He comes in. He fights Gabriel Benitez. Gabriel is a guy who's fought a whole lot of more fights. He's been experienced. He's been there with a lot of guys. And he hit him. He landed on Onama really hard in the first round. Onama was like grabbing his eye. He thought he had an eye poke, but it looked like he landed a perfect shot, kind of to the eye. But Onama was able to kind of wrestle, able to get his bearings back right, and then when he was finally able to do that, he started pushing the pace, and he started throwing shots, and he was able to land a double-digit combo to finish the fight. It was a ton of fun to watch. He's going to be an interesting prospect going forward. He's still young, and his fight career is still, he hasn't fought a whole ton yet, and he's early in the UFC. So I'm curious to see what's next for him. It was a ton of fun to watch his fight on Saturday. And then moving to another undercard fight, Chaz Skelly. This was kind of his, from what he said, this was his last fight. He fought Mark Striegel, and he said it was his retirement fight, but it was a ton of fun to watch. Skelly was, you could tell he was the better grappler, but then he was opening up shots on the feet too. That's just something that the grappling does sometimes for these guys. He landed a big elbow and he followed it up with a knee to the chin that it landed perfectly and dropped Striegel. And he finished the win. And if he is retiring, what better way to go out than get a finish in your last MMA fight? You see a lot of guys who fight to the point of getting consecutive losses, and then it's like they keep getting more and more fights because they want to come back and get a win, and then the UFC throws them against some guy who's 25 and has 2 losses on his career or something, and then they get knocked out again. And so, not to say that that's what would have happened to Skelly, but to see a guy also go out kind of on his own terms, retire off a big win, I think that's always fun to see. So those are kind of my two favorites from the prelims. And then kicking off the main card, we had Joaquin Buckley, and he was going against Abdul Razak Al Hassan. This was a really fun fight. Abdul clearly had the advantage on the power, even though Joaquin Buckley has crazy power himself. But you could tell that Buckley was reserved. He didn't want to go into a firefight and risk getting caught. So he utilized a lot of wrestling, double legs, and takedowns in the first couple rounds, and you could tell it gassed Abdul out by the second round. And then the third round came and it flipped, and Buckley was clearly gassed, and Buckley was able to get taken down and kind of controlled on the ground. And at one point it looked like he might have been in trouble, but Abdul was for sure able to take that third round. But Buckley, he won the fight regardless. It was really fun to watch. He had the Dust guy, the Detroit Urban Survival trainer, in his corner, so that was really fun. And then they asked him about it afterwards, and he did still have his main head coach in the corner, but he brought this guy in, and he said, the UFC wasn't doing a good enough job promoting my fight, so I brought him in, and then we saw guys like Snoop Dogg and DJ Khaled talking about it, and I think that's brilliant. If you got an opportunity to, especially if you're not like the main event, if you got an opportunity to bring someone into your corner that's gonna draw attention to you, people are gonna watch you fight for that reason, and then you got an opportunity to just gain more fans, like tons more people tuned in for that fight. And they tune in for that fight. They know that he's got the dust guy in the corner. They know he had like the best knockout of 2020, and so it's like doing those kind of things. That's how you get a bigger fan base. And I really liked the move for Buckley, and he was able to capitalize and pull off the win as well. And then kind of moving to the next fight. So this was Jim Miller versus Nicholas Mata. Mota, I believe it is. I'm sorry for the mispronunciation. But basically Miller, he goes. I feel like he's done this a lot recently, where earlier on in the fight he'll get clipped. And in this one he got rocked, but he didn't drop fully. He just kind of stumbled back and then regained his balance and just straight press forward the rest of the fight. He was landing big leg kicks, and it was opening up. His left, and then he was able to land a nice right hook in the second round that just straight dropped him, and he finished his fight like that. And Jim Miller, I believe that was a tie for the most wins in UFC history with Cowboy, and it's also two finishes in a row for him. So I'm really curious what's next for him. He's continuing to put on great fights, always fun to watch. And then for Mota in his first UFC fight, he hadn't fought since he won a contender spot in 2020. This was his debut. He fighting a guy with that much experience, like a decade more experience in MMA. I know that's got to be hard, especially a guy that's like been in the UFC for so long, he's tested and he's seen it all, been through it all. So I definitely want to see Nick fight again, see kind of what his next fight looks like, and he's still really young and everything. So it's definitely a tough fight for your first fight, and that's kind of the way the UFC makes things. They make the best fighters in the world fight the best fighters in the world. So they don't really give any older vets breaks. They always got to fight the young up and comers, and then the same for the young guys. And then moving past that fight, Parker Porter fought Alan Baudot. And this was a fun fight. Porter used a lot of wrestling. You could tell Baudot had the length and everything, and he could be trouble on the feet. But Porter was able to utilize his wrestling, and not necessarily like dominate in a wrestling sense, but in the clinch and kind of push the pace of the fight. So Porter kind of won the first couple rounds in my opinion, but at the very end of the second round, Baudot landed a big shot that made Porter bleed out of his nose. And then at the kind of the beginning of the third round, Porter was kind of getting pieced up from distance, but then he was able to turn things around and get a takedown and finish the fight on top in the last 2 minutes. So he was able to pull away with the win. I think watching heavyweights is always fun to me. Usually you got, maybe not necessarily in this fight, although Baudot has a lot of big finishes, but you got guys that are so big they can finish each other at any minute. And then just kind of watching, I think this one had a decent pace for heavyweights, so I thought it was a lot of fun to watch. And then we had Kyle Dawkins. He came in against Jamie Pickett. This was a short notice fight for Jamie Pickett. I know Julian Marquez was supposed to fight, but he had to pull out. So Pickett comes in, they fight at catch weight. But Dawkins he looked awesome the whole fight. He was getting takedown after takedown. Pickett was able to get up the first couple times, and then he was able to secure a Darce towards the end of the round, and like you hear the 10-second bell ring, or the 10-second bell, and then everyone's just like, Pickett, you just gotta last a few more seconds, dude. It doesn't look like you're about to be choked unconscious or anything. And he literally taps like 1, 2 times, maybe just once, and then immediately after the bell ends, the round's over. So he tapped like a second early. If he would have held on 1 extra second, he would have made it to round 2, and we would have seen if he could do anything different. But Doc has controlled the whole fight from start to finish. And then Pickett had said after the fight that he had his tongue like underneath his mouth guard, so he was concerned that he was gonna like literally bite his tongue off. Which, yeah, I mean, I'm sure that can be very concerning. It's tough to lose when you come in on short notice and everything, but we'll see Pickett bounce back. He'll get a full camp next time, and we'll get to see him with a little bit more preparation. So I'm excited to see that. And then the main event of the evening, Jamal Hill versus Johnny Walker. This was a fun fight. I kind of said before, like I think this is Hill's fight to win, as long as Walker can't land anything crazy. And Walker clearly had the reach advantage. He's got the distance. He's got crazy power. Like his kicks that were blocked, like you could tell they left a big swollen, I think you call it a hematoma on Jamal Hill's arm. But Hill in the first part of the fight, he was having trouble getting through with the left, just on the distance. And Johnny Walker was throwing a lot of high kicks, and he was mixing it up, looking good until he wasn't. Then literally Jamal Hill switched stances. I think it was the first time he did it the whole fight. And like his first shot, huge right hand. Crazy the amount of power and what it did to Johnny Walker, because it doesn't look like he's like landing perfectly clean, but it looks like he hits the temple. And basically he lands this right hand, he hits him like not straight on, like it even went past him kind of, and Johnny Walker like went stiff as a board and then fell straight back. And when he lands on the ground, he's still conscious. And Jamal Hill comes in, left hand, right hand, straight down at the chin, and then follows it through with a shoulder. And at that point, Johnny Walker was just out cold completely. Jamal Hill's the real deal. That's all there is to it. He's cracking the top 10 with this win. If he continues to get exciting wins like this, he could be a couple fights away from the belt. Let's say he fights someone in the top 7 next time. I hear a lot of people say maybe Dominic Reyes comes back and fights him. We'll see. I think there's a ton of interesting matchups for Hill. If he gets a big win in his next fight, he's already main evented. If he gets another big win, he's fighting someone in the top 5, and then he's in the title picture. And I don't want to talk too soon about it, because obviously we got to see a couple more fights, but he very well could be fighting for the belt at the end of this year, early next year. And a matchup I want to see is Hill versus Yuri. I think Hill's boxing versus Yuri's striking style would be very fun to watch. I'd be curious if Yuri can deal with the power. The thing about Yuri is he's going to continue to push. He's going to keep throwing. He fights at a crazy pace. But even in the Reyes fight, he got caught a couple times. Not hurt more than he was hurt in Reyes, but if you fight Jamal Hill, a guy who can shut your lights out with some of those same punches, I think Hill has more weapons, boxing-wise, than Reyes. Reyes has the big left, but he literally just showed it last night. He's got the power in both hands. So to see a fight like that, I think would be a ton of fun to watch. Obviously, we know Yuri's going to fight Glover for the belt. Whether he wins or not, I want to see this fight eventually down the line. I think it would be fun to watch. And then, I do want to kind of talk a little bit about Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker is a super fun guy to watch. He's 6'6", crazy good athlete. He's a guy who's talked about fighting light heavyweight and heavyweight, in the future. But he's in a weird spot, because if he jumps up to heavyweight, he's going to be fighting guys that are 260. So he might have the height and the reach and everything on some of those guys, but he's gonna be fighting guys way bigger, weight wise, that have crazy knockout power. I mean, Walker's getting knocked out a decent amount at light heavyweight. I do think that he should move on from SBG. I don't want to be too critical, um, but from what I've seen about SBG is you got Conor McGregor who comes in and he is an all-time great. He helped change the sport of MMA. But outside of him, they haven't really. It's not like they're breeding champions over there. And Johnny Walker, he hasn't had any kind of improvements. He's lost most of his fights since going to SBG. And then one like a main thing I saw, Johnny Walker posted a video, talking about his loss. It was just a quick video. Kind of him saying I'm all right. I don't even remember it or whatever he. And Kavanaugh in the background literally pulls up bottle of Proper 12. Give McGregor a plug on that. In front of your fighter who just lost. Like, dude, I don't think that's in good taste. I know I've been hearing people say for years McGregor should have left SBG. Like, what would McGregor be looking like if he had been fighting against, like, with one of these top gyms? Like in Florida or with Whitman, and it it's very interesting. And like outside of Johnny Walker, I don't even know like if there's any other big names in the UFC outside of McGregor that still train at SBG. And we've seen McGregor's career has not gotten better. He peaked in like 2015. He peaked when he beat Alvarez. He never defended a single belt. Not the 145, not the 155. He did the Nate fight. He goes and fights Floyd. Like, who's to blame him? Anybody with a chance to make $100 million is gonna do it. And then he comes back. He loses to Habib. At this point, losing to Habib, you could tell like this dude. One, he showed up to the press conference drunk as hell. And then you can just tell it's not the same motivated guy who's talking about how he's grown. He's coming up on welfare, and working as a plumber or whatever it was in Ireland. It's not that same hungry Mystic Mac or whatever you call it. And he's never been the same since. He had a moment of it against Cowboy. Cowboy fighting on. He got the main event against Cowboy. Like, Cowboy's been towards the end of his career. He's not exactly been knocking dudes out. He's not in the prime of his career by any means. And McGregor had that moment, and then since then he did fight one of the best fighters in the world. Don't get me wrong, Poirier's that dude. But in both of those fights he got dominated. And then just some of the antics that McGregor's done. The legal trouble. You can tell he's got substance issues. I don't want to place exactly what it's on, but you can tell he's got issues with alcohol. He's the founder of Proper 12. I know I think he's got like a dark beer or something like that too that he's been selling Black Forge in. And so he's clearly an alcoholic, maybe doing other stuff. He's so tied up in how rich he is, talking about his yachts and nonsense, that he's not the same. And when he does fight, it's clear he's fighting for the passion of the game. He doesn't need the money anymore. But it's also like, if like I think he had an opportunity to be, bigger than he even is, bigger than he was. And some of the things he's been doing lately, talking the way that he did to Poirier's wife and things like that, it's not exactly getting new fans, and you're kind of just hurting your own career at this point. But that's just my thoughts on all the UFC stuff. Let me know what you guys think about some the topics that we discussed. I know some of them were a little bit controversial, but this sports show, From the Couch Sports, I'm a fan of sports. I sit on my couch and watch sports. How do you watch sports? I think a lot of people can relate to me. I'm not a former pro athlete. I didn't play college ball, nothing like that. I'm just a passionate fan about sports, and if you like the content, please like and subscribe the video. Um, tune in for more. Let me know some feedback. What's your takes on some of the subjects we talked about? But as always, thanks for tuning in.